what they will do is, in the beginning, they will see, does it work? Okay. The pastor said something about a soft answer turns away wrath. Okay, let's see if that works.
Welcome to the broadcast. This is Michael Easley inContext, and if you've been watching our program or Mike Glenn's program, you're starting to see more of the two of us. That may be good or bad.
I know. Let's go with good. Let's go with good.
Mike, when I started Dallas Seminary, they had this impriture, and it said "Karuxon ton logon," and we all, knew our little bit of Greek in those days, and it was preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with great patience and instruction. For a time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance with their own desires, and will turn away their ears from truth and will turn to myths. You've written a new book, Preaching in a Post-Truth World, and I read it cover to cover, and thanks for coming on to chat about it a little bit.
Glad to. Appreciate
you and I were trained. Of course, you have a Baptist background. I have more of an evangelical background, but we were trained in similar ways.
Right.
This is the Word of God. Mm-hmm. You don't have to make it relevant.
No.
It is relevant.
Yeah.
I was trained to teach expositionally, basically a paragraph at a time, so to speak. You were trained to preach
much the same way, much the same way, with a little more of freedom for the narrative expression and the cradix and that kind of stuff, but basically the same way.
You have a bit of a advantage in some respects. You have both a philosophical framework, which has some drama framework as well. Mm-hmm. So you engage an audience probably better than a lot of the guys that were trained in my milieu. We were more teachers than preachers. Mm-hmm. And that's fair contrast. Did your congregation differentiate between, okay, that's Bible exposition, that's narrative, that's more dramatic, or is that just something you?
No, that was just the flow of trying to get the message across in a way that they would remember it and hold on to it.
Did you have a methodology, like in seminary we had a exegetical outline, then an expositional outline, what you're going to preach? Some bought into the big idea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one central thing, and then the three things.
Subject and complement. Yeah. Did you have a framework?
My framework was mostly I need to give them some kind of hook that they can hold on to. If I can give them the hook, then they can remember everything that was attached to that hook. But if you don't give them the hook, then the other day we were talking to a friend who works here. And she had just come back from a Bible conference. I said, okay, what was the Bible conference about? She said, well, he was just so smart. He just gave us so much stuff. And I said, okay, and you're taking away from that. What? And she couldn't remember anything. There was just so much flooded onto her. And in the moment, she had the thrill of, boy, this is new and I'm getting a lot of stuff. But then there was nothing for her to hold on to so she can actually learn from it and apply it to her own life.
We had several different models or modalities, something, the big idea. I was more of a, this is what the passage states, this is a principle, this is an application of it, hopefully a good illustration to make that hook.
Right.
But there might be 3 or 5 points. We had the other side of the fence was, no, it's just one thing. They're not going to remember 3 or 5. My point was, well, fair. If I give 3, maybe this person will get this one. I mean, who knows? Audience output. You started in your introduction about the gap, and Howard Hendricks said, if there's a mist in the pulpit, there's a fog in the pew.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like your gap.
Yeah. There is and I wrote the book because I was spending more and more time with younger preachers, as we do as we get sent out to pasture here as senior pastors.
Pastor, not pasture.
Yeah. And they were saying, hey, here is how I preach. And they were never thoughtful or mindful of how their congregation comes into the church.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do, regardless of who's out there and regardless of what kind of week they've had or how they're processing. And so you can deliver this, but it's in a package form that your congregation can't relate to or think about, or much less hold on to.
I was probably late 30s, early 40s, and someone made the observation, you preach to the audience you have or the audience you want.
Right.
And in my worldview, I thought, I'm a 40-year-old something with a biological child, at that time one adopted child. I have a happily married wife. I'm a white person. And inadvertently, that's
the lens.
That's your lens.
Right.
And Mike, I took 8.5 by 11. This was before computers. And I drew a bell curve, thumbtacked it on my wall in front of my typewriter. And I put disenfranchised teenager who comes to the big church, widow, widower, and everybody in between. And then I put adjectives describing those people groups. So I'm reading commentaries, typing, and I would sit back and go, okay, how's a widowed person or a young married couple with 3 kids or one in college or a divorced person? And boy, that expanded.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend who used to, on the Wednesday of his sermon prep, would go and sit in his sanctuary and just sit where he knew where all his people sat. And he would go and he would sit, okay, now Frank's going to sit here.
How's he going to
Frank's an insurance agent. He's been married to his wife for 20 years and he's got 2 kids. How's he going? Then he'd get up and move around.
I love it.
And it was an interesting thought experiment of how different people in his congregation would hear the same message. And you've had this happen, as I have, as people have walked out and said, man, it was a great sermon, when you preach, and then talk about something you didn't even preach about.
I call it chump change theology.
because I
remember when you said
Yeah, thank you.
My favorite one, I was at a pastor's conference years ago, and this guy goes, man, I love your preaching. I'll never forget the story about the tomato.
Yeah.
What story about a tomato?
I'm sure I had one, but I got no clue.
I've slept since then. But back to that, our friend Darren Tyler,
right?
I've often said is probably one of the best cultural exegetes I've ever known. And his background's very different than yours and mine. He was in the music industry. But and when he preaches, Mike, he'll say, and Tom, you da-da-da-da-da-da, and last week, Susan, and he knows his people. And, when you're called out in a room like that,
that's right.
You're paying attention to,
right.
He called you out in the service, you missed it. But that's a connection with his people. He knows where they are.
Yeah. And I don't think, I don't think a lot of us understand when you and I, when we preach, we put our Bibles on the pulpit and we understand this is the Word of God.
Yes.
And it's His revelation to us, and it's all the truth we need to live a life worthy of living, of meaning and hope and purpose and all those good things in your life. And we have literally spent our lives studying this text, and we are surprised every time we open the text.
Morning by morning, the verses I read.
Yes, and you open it up, and it's like, I have never
seen this before.
Seen that.
Yeah.
And we come to the pulpit with that. Well,
we're excited. We're ginned up.
And this you can bet your life on what we're telling you. Your congregation is out there. They've had hundreds of truth claims made in their lives. And you're just bringing one more.
One time a week.
And you've got to fight all of the social media and all of the cable channels and all of that, which are also making truth claims. And so we have to understand that more and more, and we talk about this a lot, we're now in the first century culture.
In a lot of ways.
Because we are preaching a gospel in the midst of a lot of truth claims and authorities. And I think some of the things that we see from the early church and the preaching of the early apostles is something that we need to rediscover now in our preaching.
I think you referenced Mars Hill in here at one point.
Yeah.
And how Paul, and then in Ephesus,
right,
with Artemis and was Artemis in Ephesus
and the silversmith.
The silversmith.
Yeah.
Alexander the coppersmith. Anyway, but yeah, so he dialed into that culture and that situation that was their truth,
and started there. and came and then said, so I think one of the things, and I was taught against this, you were probably taught against this too, about how open and personal we are in the pulpit.
Yeah, that's been a dynamic change in the last 3 decades.
Yeah. We were kind of, that was...
Our mentors were like, don't talk about yourself.
Don't talk about yourself. The people don't come to hear about you.
That doesn't work today.
And we don't
It didn't work the last 20 years.
Well, it hadn't worked, and we don't need your story. Paul, Peter, John all started with, this is what we know. This is what we have experienced. And from that, the sermon came.
Well, think of Paul's credentials.
Yes.
Hebrew of Hebrews, school of Gamaliel, all these things. It's his whole story.
Yeah. And have suffered more for the gospel than all of you.
And beyond all that,
and with that, and then people are willing to hear your story. So that's what makes it interesting and intriguing. And this is something I have field tested in my own life.
We've gone from propositional truth to sort of an applicational truth.
Right.
So men that you and I esteem have never talked about an argument they had with their wife,
Nope.
a problem child,
Nope.
Money problems, health problems. I mean, we know men we respect who won't even say what they're going through health-wise, and they look like they're hanging on for dear life. And that was that generation,
Right.
respectfully. But you get no street cred unless it's like the scene in Jaws. If you can't show your scars,
Right.
I've got 3 children, or 2 children, or 1 child that's broken my heart and smashed it to bits. I've got a child that's left the faith. We've had terrible health issues. We've lost money in bad decisions. Then they pay attention to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're ministering to a lot of younger pastors in the area,
Right.
And you're trying to help them understand the audience has changed. We're a post-truth world,
Right.
So what are some key things you want to drive home with these younger guys?
One, the attention span is that of a gnat.
Flash paper.
Flash paper, and we've
so
got
sad.
Well, it is, and when you read the Spurgeon and
37 pages on one illustration.
Cotton and all of those Cotton Mathers and all those guys, preaching an hour and people 2 hours. No. That doesn't work, and we've got a generation coming up that think they need to preach or teach about 45 minutes, and you have to be extraordinarily good to hold your congregation's attention for 45 minutes. And the reason is Spurgeon didn't have to deal with a cell phone
or anything.
Yeah,
books and
if you walk up and you begin your sermon with, "Hey, we want to invite you to a Bible study for left-handed truck drivers. We're meeting Thursday morning. We'd love to have you here." I'm out there thinking, well, okay, I'm not a left-handed truck driver. This doesn't apply to me. And when I make that decision, it doesn't apply to me, what happens? Out comes the phone.
Yep.
All right, I got to be here Monday, Tuesday. Well, that's a big project on Thursday. I got to get sermons going on, that kind of stuff, but I am gone. And there are some who say you have 90 seconds to establish a point of concern, or your congregation won't listen to you.
We were taught a minute.
Yeah.
You got 1 minute to grab their attention, or they're gone.
They're gone. Google says it is 8 seconds.
I believe it. Today.
8 seconds.
Well, think about the dopamines when we're going through our own family Instagram.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, I don't care about that one. I'm looking for the next one.
That's right.
So let me ask you this, and I don't know that you addressed it in the book, but I know you and I have thought about this. If all you read was Louis L'Amour or Harlequin romance novels, is there not a point when you need to learn to read Chaucer or Shakespeare or maybe even, London? I mean,
yeah.
And so on the one hand, our jobs as pastor teachers, yes, we got to get that nanosecond flash paper attention, but aren't we also trying to drive them into this living word?
Oh yeah, and to maturity.
Yes,
and to maturity. Yeah, but my
it's a
point
long path.
Yes, it is, and that's why Paul talks so much about patience, and Jesus talks so much about agriculture. You work the soil, you wait, you plant, you wait, you weed, you wait, and most of us are looking. And I grew up with the same kind of thing. I've got one sermon, And after that third point, somebody's coming to Christ. And now it may be a year of conversation before that person decides that they want to commit to Christ.
Is that in part because there's so many truths out there?
Yes. And they're going to weigh all of that and test all of that. And the interesting thing is, truth is what works for many of our people.
Well, you talk about Pilate's ultimate question.
Yeah.
And that really struck me. I thought, I remember debating that in seminary.
Right.
What a dodge on one hand. It was brilliant. On the other, it was cowardly. It was such interesting. What's truth? You can almost see what's true.
Yeah, we all know what truth is. Whatever Caesar says it is.
Yeah, whatever the boss says, that's what's true. That's too convicting. You talk about understanding the human condition, and again, part of that relates to knowing that this guy's an insurance salesman. What else would you say on that?
Part of it is knowing that everybody out there, and it's the same thing. I used to tell the church, I said, listen, it would scare you to death to know the pain that's on the pew with you. Yeah. That I'm not, one of the biggest heartbreaks for me was when we did Kairos, the young adult worship experience. And I realized that when I said, God loves you like a father, it sent some of my women into panic. Wow. Because their fathers had abused them.
Right.
And it would literally lock them down in that moment. They wouldn't hear anything else I said. And so we had to stop and unpack that and say, this is a metaphor.
Perfect father.
Yeah, this is a picture that Jesus gave us. So it's understanding that everybody out there is broken, and the light that you are bringing to them is fractured in those prisms.
Fallen world, fallen context,
fallen context,
people.
Fallen context, and most of them begin with the simple thing: I don't want to hurt anymore. I don't care about getting well. I just don't want to hurt anymore. And so you got a wife out there whose marriage is fraying, and she's trying to hold on to 2 kids, and the husband works too much and all of that. She just doesn't want to hurt anymore. And so how does the gospel begin there? And one of the things I'm trying to help young people understand, these young pastors understand, is you have to begin the conversation with where they are, with the questions they're asking.
It's a fine balance because not everybody's there.
Right.
I remember early in ministry, and you probably did some pastoral counseling too, when you're kind of the general guy. I wasn't any good at it, but you did it. And you start seeing the hurt.
Right.
And you look out across that room, and it's like the stubbed toe. This guy beats his wife, or this guy's had an affair, or whatever. Right. And then you start seeing the whole world that way. That's why I don't think therapists necessarily make good preachers, because they see the whole world through a therapeutic lens. We can be guilty of same. Right. And there are people that are trying, right? They want to grow. Maybe they got too many truths in their box, but they listen to what Pastor Mike said this. And I'm thinking about that this week.
That's right. And again, what they will do is, in the beginning, they will see, does it work? Okay. The pastor said something about a soft answer turns away wrath. Okay, let's see if that works. So somebody says something, they don't respond in anger, and it works.
Dials it down. We've got a conversation when we did have an argument. So, okay, now maybe I need to listen to some more about what this Jesus guy said. Good point.
Because that worked.
Yeah. You talk about this board of directors in our heads.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to laugh because mine was a pantheon. Yeah. This guy was the most evangelistic. This guy was the Hebrew scholar. This guy was my exposition. And they're all over my shoulder when I'm writing my sermon every week. And Cindy and I went to counseling during our 10th year of marriage. And it's like I said, I was the rare bird. I drug my wife to counseling. Usually women want their husband. You got something wrong, you go. I'm like, let's just get a 50,000 mile checkup here. Right. And just as a sidebar, I looked around our church wonderful people. But Mike, there wasn't one couple that I thought, I want to be like them
Right.
when I've been married 30 years. And I hate to say that publicly, but it was true.
Right.
And I thought, I don't want to be entropy in my marriage in parallel. So I drug her to counseling. Sidebar. One of the things this counselor observed, somehow we got on this subject, and he looked at this pantheon, and he goes, you know what I want to do with that pantheon? I want to take it and break it in 1,000 pieces. I had a visceral response.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
That's right. No. That's
And he laughed.
all of my validation
He laughed.
comes from
He
these
said,
guys.
You are more important as Michael Easley than the way that
Yeah,
you
I've
have
had
constructed your word, board of directors in your head. Talk about that.
Had a similar story. Well, we all have people that we pick as heroes, and it could be anybody, and these are the people that help us make decisions. What would this person
Right.
do? What would this person do? Jesus is on that board.
Let's hope. One would hope.
Yeah, he's on that board, and we want his opinion, but it's not the final word. The story I tell is somebody hits you and you go, well, Jesus, turn the other cheek. Well, that's interesting. Clint Eastwood, what would you do in this situation?
You have to ask.
So we have to get with that. But this understanding that there is one Lord, and there is one conversation, and there is one truth.
One faith.
And that his word is valid. It has been valid. It will be valid, and it is valid right now in your moment. And my particular circumstance doesn't invalidate his truth. I haven't discovered something new that's going to cause Jesus to rethink what he's taught us.
Is part of this our feelings first? Because this is what I feel about the situation.
Yeah, part of it. And part of it is the other parts, the other systems have broken down. See, everything we've trusted in, everything that you and I believed in, and we're taught to honor,
Doesn't matter anymore.
doesn't matter anymore.
Do you remember specific when that first happened to you? While you're thinking, we were living in D.C., and I would spend a lot of time going downtown, taking the metro.
Yeah.
And I remember holding a door for a woman, and she walked through and went, and in my flesh I said, "You're welcome."
Yeah.
But I thought, boy, has the world changed.
Yeah.
It was just, you hold the door for the next person.
Yeah.
Not even a woman.
Yeah, this
for
is
the
what I
next
would
person.
do for any friend. Yeah.
But boy, that was one of I still remember it, right?
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago.
Oh gosh, I've had so many of those where you realize you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. So
Or Alabama.
yeah, or Alabama.
Because you've never taken the time to process our experience, we so fully understand, as much as we can understand, the grace of Christ. As a result, we struggle to communicate what Christ has done for us, who Christ is for us, and what Christ is doing in our lives now. Our witness is confused, therefore unconvincing. Remember, after his conversion on the road to Damascus, the Apostle Paul disappeared into the Arabian desert for 3 years. Then, after initial introduction to Peter, spent 14 years in isolation poring over the Scriptures. That's pretty profound.
Because we do not take the time to sit down and say, this is what happened to me. This is where I was. This is what happened. This is where I met Christ. This is where Christ came to me. And now, because of that, this is how I understand everything else. This is how I understand the world and stuff. In Baptist life, you come to Christ, there's an emotional catharsis, you're baptized.
It begins, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Yikes.
You've been baptized, have a seat, next. Yeah, that's exactly. We got him. He's another soul for heaven. We're good. Now we're going to go at. But nobody, in my tradition, there's very little emphasis on growing again.
And to inject, when I was in the early 70s and the Bible church movement was starting to kind of take off, Dallas, it was sort of an immature. A lot of Baptists had gravitated to the Bible church because of this. And they said, yeah, I know I'm saved. And I've sinned just as I am enough times, and I've walked the aisle and prayed the prayer, and I've done it 3 or 4 times, and I got a letter, but the Bible church is teaching. But the Bible church failed my observation on the evangelism part.
Yeah. Now, Baptists know how to make babies. We can do the invitation better than anybody. Now, but if you go to any Methodist Presbyterian church in town, you're going to find pews full of Baptists who were born again, legitimately so, but got tired of hearing the same John 3:16 passage every time they showed up at church. They needed to grow again. Okay, I'm a Christian, now what?
Now what? And that's what I mean about the audience, because
Right.
you do have the heartbroken. I mean, their world starts and stops with chronic acute pain.
Yeah, right.
And this, and not to be indelicate, but I would call it remedial ministry.
Mm-hmm.
You're really trying to help at the basic survival.
Mm-hmm.
But as a person grows, milk the meat, hopefully, right? I thought this was interesting. This is in your chapter, We're Not Stuck. And you write, you tell a story about Bronnie Ware. Ware began to pay attention to the type of things people regretted, and the number one regret, not living the life the person wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
They simply didn't live the life they had envisioned for themselves. That's sad.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
I saw a news piece the other day with a 12-year-old boy who's, during the pandemic, all his buddies were playing video games, and he had a business idea to recycle plastic bottles and make swimwear. He's 17 today and a multimillionaire.
I'm a multimillionaire. That's right.
And they asked him about it. He goes, well, you got one life. You can play video games, but I wanted to start a business.
That's right. And he's 17, right? Yeah.
But I mean, and probably if you and I were under truth serum, I got lots of regrets.
Oh, gosh.
And if I went back, would I do this or that? But you also look at the sovereign hand of God. But let's talk about the point you're addressing in that chapter.
Most of us do not understand, and I'm speaking for my tribe, most of us do not understand that the whole point of the justification process of the salvation experience is to get you in alignment with Christ's will and Christ's teaching, so that now you can live the life that you've always wanted but didn't know how to get. One of the surprises in life is, who was it, Garrison Keillor, in the last paragraph of Late Wombegone Days, is happiness is not getting what you want, but in getting what you have, which is what you would have wanted if you'd been smart enough to want it in the first place, And so, but that same is a process of beginning to live that life. My tribe is, we got born again, we got baptized, then we sat and we waited for the second coming. But there was no engagement of life.
You think it's really that separated from most Christians?
It was in my experience.
It's a perfunctory.
Yeah.
Trust Christ. I know I'm going to heaven.
And that's done. Now I can
try to live well.
Yeah, I do. I try to do the best I can.
Wow.
But I do it separate from a walk and growth in Christ, and an embodiment of the grace that I know in my life.
Your next was dovetails is, what do you want? And this, of course, was an obsessive question. Again, Howard Hendricks had a great imprint in my life, and he would always ask, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
You have to define that before you talk about what you're going to do.
Right.
You want a good marriage? And he would say, is your wife's name on your calendar?
Yeah.
She's not on your calendar. She's not a priority.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be a great communicator? What books are you reading?
That's
what are
right.
you studying? Who's reading your sermons?
Yeah, I learned that lesson on the golf course. And I may have told you this story. I'm playing with a 16-year-old golf phenom.
That was your first mistake.
who was the son of the golf pro in a little town where I lived. And I hit my ball and it went somewhere. And Alex laughed. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" Because, it's rude to laugh in golf.
You think?
It's rude. It's a tough shot. We'll find it, I'm sure, something encouraging like that, But he laughed. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "You." He said, you don't do anything in your swing to make the ball go where you want it to go.
Well, thank you.
You just stand up here and wish." Okay. That was the difference. That was the day I found out the difference between wishing and wanting. Wishing means I'd like for this to happen, but I'm not doing anything
to get there.
To get there. Wanting means I would like for this to happen, and I'm doing the necessary steps. I want to go to med school. What's your grade point average? 1.9. You're not going to med school.
You don't want it bad
You're
enough.
not going. You don't want it. So it's the same kind of thing. I want a happy marriage. Okay, what's your plan? Okay, are you dating your wife? Do you have a Friday night plan? Have you asked her out? Do you know her 3 goals? What's important to Cindy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how are you committed to make sure that those goals happen? How do I tell people, I had to learn to speak Jeannieese. I had to learn her language.
Is that a moving target like Cindy?
Sometimes, yeah. It is a dynamic language.
Dynamic, that's a better way of saying it.
Dynamic language.
That's a better.
Okay. Of things that she wanted and things that are important to her, which aren't necessarily important to me.
Or different categories.
Different categories, different kind of things. So I'm doing those necessary things. Fellowship with other believers is me. So I'm in some groups with some other men. And we talk about holding each other accountable. It's not that somebody's in your face all the time. It's that somebody knows you enough and loves you enough to say, Michael, I know you. Yep. This behavior doesn't match who I know you are. So what's going on? This is not who I know you to be.
Yep. And you've done that for me.
Yeah, well.
You have. On occasion, you've called me after a group and said, "What's going on with you?" You have. But I talk about Dave Gibson, one of my closest friends. We talk all the time, and you've heard me say, "Do you need a dope slapper encouragement?"
That's right.
I don't know. But let's talk about accountability a second. I think that word got overstated and over-explained, and I think what you just nuanced is so helpful.
Right.
It's, I love Mike Glenn enough to say, Mike, you've been too sullen lately.
That's right, yeah.
Or buddy, what's going on?
What we found out with Chris and Craig, our boys, is we would sit down with them and say, we have literally known you before you were born.
Wow.
We have pictures of you before you got here. We have loved you before you ever got here. This is who we know you to be. This behavior doesn't match.
Powerful.
Who we know you to be.
Yep.
Tell me what happened.
You're calling them to something as opposed to saying,
right. Yes.
hammer.
Yeah. This is who I know you are. This doesn't match. Why didn't you trust yourself in this moment?
Back to this this wishing and wanting. I remember early in life, I was working part-time jobs as long back as I can remember. And I would say to my dad, I wish it was Friday.
Yeah.
Wish it was Friday.
Yeah.
And he'd go, boy, you're wishing your life away.
Yeah.
What do young pastors wish for as opposed to want?
Most of us wish for the next big pulpit.
Interesting.
When you start out, okay, I know I'm
Wait,
here.
do the young pastors still have that objective today?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
because you told me the future of the church is small.
Well, I do. I think the future of the church is small, community-centered congregations of 500 or so that really,
that's a good mid-sized
claim,
church. 500. Yeah.
That own that community.
Okay. But you think most young guys still want the bigger, better, newer
pulpit, social, at least some kind of significant platform, whether on social media and speaking to conferences and that kind of stuff. And they're always looking at, okay, if I meet Mike Easley, then he can introduce me to so and so. So everything is about, and it's never about being where you are. And I remember the most disappointed day in my life was when I went to my first big church, and I went home, and Jeannie said, "What's the matter?" And I looked at her and I said, "There's just more of them."
Wow.
Same people in this church. They were in my last church. Just more of them.
Wow. That's hard. It's sober.
Yeah.
It's sober.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the people I had in that first church, they're here.
I used to use an illustration with, talk about conferences. You and I have been on both sides of that box so many times. It's very interesting. But I used to use this illustration of if you have 5 strengths, let's say leadership, teaching, whatever, and you're looking for a 5-finger glove. Reality, if you get 3, that's a pretty good church.
Yeah, no kidding.
So when we went from Texas to Northern Virginia, D.C., I said I went from let's say a 5-finger glove with 3 to a 22-finger glove.
That's right.
I'm trying to find where do I fit in this,
Yeah.
you know. And you're right. It's not only more of them, but it's exponential. It's quantum change.
Right.
And then you become a specialist, right?
Right. You actually do less.
And those guys,
Yeah.
I think, who have that, I wish I was so-and-so pastor.
Yeah.
They don't, so how do you help them? I guess this is a side question. Content where they are?
Yeah. There is this thing about contentment and working the field where you are, because it's the same skills. And it's the same people, the same kind of relationships that you're going to have no matter where you are. Now, you're hoping that every congregation teaches you and prepares you for the future that God has for you. You know, when I was at First Baptist Church, Edgefield, South Carolina, Lib Morgan, the English teacher at the high school,
I love this already.
walked up to me and she said, "We love you and you're a good preacher. But your grammar is awful." She patted me. She says, "It won't hurt you here because we love you, but it will hold you back."
Interesting.
And I said, "Lib, I can't hear it. Will you write me a note?" And she said, "Yeah, if that's what would help you." The next Sunday, I got 3 bulletin full
Of observations.
of bad grammar.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I left, I was down to half a bulletin. So,
Progress.
oh yeah,
Progress.
man, I was happy. This is all right.
That's so interesting because mine's a longer story, but similar experience. We were in a manual, and this woman chased me down between services, and she said, "I need 20 minutes of your time, and I can help you." Mm-hmm. And in a weak moment, I said, "Sure." She came in. She had manuscripted my sermon. Remember the Corona cartridges?
Right. Oh, gosh.
She put a red cartridge in when I said something poorly.
Yeah.
She played a cassette tape of my message and turned the manuscript around. And then she said, "I can fix this. It'll be the hardest thing you've ever done, but I can fix it."
Yeah.
33 weeks we met over about 18 months. She did that every time. And then she gave me exercises that I had to say to her liking. My favorite one was the brown clown fell down with a frown. And I had to say it till she was happy because I mumbled.
Yeah.
And I dropped
Diction.
sentences.
Right.
I dropped sentences. And I compress. And she hated my S's and T's to this day. But you fast forward, there was a Korean-speaking couple, a doctor and his wife, and I shared this story in a sermon some years later. And she walked down and was Anju. And she says, "Now I know why I can understand you."
Yeah.
And one of Reagan's speechwriters came to Cindy and said, "I can tell someone's worked with him."
Yeah.
So bless
God
God
bless
for,
him.
for
And
that
God
English
bless
teacher
him.
and for D.
Yes,
Ryan.
God bless
God
him.
for them because in some real world that wouldn't have gone to Brentwood for you.
And I would have been limited.
Same for me
with that. And,
Emmanuel
and
on,
grateful for that. But how many times do I catch somebody who is speaking publicly mispronounce something or saying like, "Shh."
Hyperbole.
Liv Morgan would have eaten them
Paul
alive.
uses hyperbole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a pastor say that a few times. He uses hyperbole. No. If you don't know what the word means, don't say it.
No.
So address the younger pastor with what we're talking about. What did they need to hear and be aware of if they have an English teacher come to them? Or maybe
There is a craft to preaching that we don't spend enough time with. That is how people listen, what words trigger attention, that kind of how you say certain things, the way that you connect the phrases. Stand-up comedians are great at this. They are about how they can walk in, establish community, and tell stories, and build a family about these stories that everybody knows. Pastors don't work on. We spend all our time in the exegesis, and I got to get the truth. But then once you get that pile of stuff, you have to put it in a package that they can listen to and take with them.
Is part of the disconnect, especially for now these young pastors did not necessarily go to seminary.
Right.
But part of the package for you and me was we were indoctrinated in a good way,
Right.
how to study the Bible theologically, lexically, and so forth, contextually. And then the exposition was, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you'll figure that out. And today, what you're saying is the audience, the church, has changed so much culturally.
Right. You have to spend a lot more time.
We're monastic academics talking to an 8-word economy.
Right.
That's depressing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And part of it is you have to help them grow their vocabulary.
So this is one, I don't know where I learned it, but I like big words. I've always been a word guy.
Right.
And I learned early on, use it, but define it.
Mm-hmm.
Sanctification, that process where you're growing more and more into the image of Christ, less and less like my sinful self.
Right.
Loving kindness. God loves to be loyal to his people and his promises. And they always, I always strung that together.
Always together, right.
Because you have someone who's never heard the word salvific or discipleship, this Christianese, right? Do young pastors, are they encumbered by that as much as you and I were?
Worse.
Really?
Worse. Especially those that have been in seminary. Because our seminaries have become more and more disconnected from local church ministry.
Interesting.
And they're spending more time training academics.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad to hear that in a way.
Yeah, but
some of the guys coming out.
Because of that, it's the typical thing about, my New Testament professor preached it, so and so.
We're always name dropping.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, now this is a section about. It's still in the "What do you want" chapter, but you say our old ways of living and thinking have to be dismantled and removed from our lives and thought processes. We can't respond in anger the way we used to. We can't be trapped in old tapes that formed our way of thinking about our identity and values. We can't hide our addictions. And then you say from deep pain in our lives, no matter what we do, we always seem to make our decisions in reactions to that one painful moment. And I wrote in the margin, there's no growth apart from pain, right?
No. There is growth from pain, but if you get stuck in that pain,
always the victim.
Yeah, always trying to prove. I never could get my dad's affirmation. You say, so I'm always trying to get my dad's affirmation. I can't move on from that. My father, in his own brokenness, could not give this to me, but my heavenly Father has taught me these things. We don't move on from that. It's always back toward that point of pain.
Is that pretty universal with each person, you think?
Somewhat.
Yeah. Because it seems like when you peel the onion back, with the most confident business person, the most successful lawyer, whatever, there's that touch point, approval, pride, affirmation. And a lot of art, you talked about appreciating, I forget how you said it just now, but, respecting what they had and their capacity. I mean, my dad was a depression kid. And he was always worried about, are you going to have a good job, have enough money, get a job and stay there.
That's right.
Stay there, because that was their world, right? They bounced around with nothing. And you're overcompensating for the liabilities of your last generation.
Right.
How did you and I do it with our adult children? How did we overcompensate?
I grew up, my father, child of the Depression, he broke the poverty cycle in our family. That was what my dad did. And we took our boys on what we call the Glen Historical Tour and took them down to South Mississippi and all this and set them on the front porch of the old home place and said, this is where your grandfather started. And if he had not done what he did, I couldn't do what I do.
Yep.
And you wouldn't be
where you are today.
Where you are with the opportunities you have because of what he did. But because of that, I inherited that same grind and that same
work
ethic. Rome wasn't built in a day. I wasn't on that job. If I'd been on that job, there'd been some progress made.
Or you'd have been buried along the rubble.
And because of that, I did a lot of grinding on Jeannie, and I did a lot of grinding on the boys that just wasn't fair. And it was always because I was trying to match what I saw my dad do.
Okay, we got to land the plane. I'm having too much fun, but our time is gone. I'm not trying to play the my daddy can beat your daddy game. I am, however, challenging the common myth that following Jesus makes one too weak to engage and overcome life's challenges. We probably need to adjust our thinking about him. And I wrote, this Jesus is not who we think he is.
No. One of my favorite stories, one of my favorite questions to ask, Jesus goes into the temple, turns over everything, and nobody challenges him. Now, if I'm sitting there and I've got my little table, my little coins stacked up, my little birds here in this cage, and he comes and turns over my table, he and I are going to have a discussion. He's going to help me. I understand he's clumsy. Okay, help me put my table back up. But nobody says anything to Jesus. There had to be something. And of course, there's the old thing now that the German theologians made him a carpenter.
Yeah.
And he could have very well been a stonemason.
Stonemason, yep.
And so
I agree.
His shoulders may have been bigger than we think, and
yep.
his hands may have been more raw than we think. But when the fierceness of when he turned over those tables and claimed his father's house,
yeah,
and nobody said anything.
Word
to
one.
Him. There is a fierceness to this Jesus when he protects his children that the world won't stand against. Mm. And we always think that being the Christian, we go up against the world, we're gentle and we're mild. No. Jesus can grab the world at its foundations and flip it.
I would tell young pastors and people in ministry, there's times when you have to speak the truth and smile.
That's right.
Say, I'm sorry, I disagree. That's
right.
wrong.
That's right.
This is what Christ says. This is what the Scripture says. You can disagree with me, but it's true. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about. Well, the book, again, is Preaching in a Post-Truth World. I would encourage you, if you have a younger pastor, get this to him as a gift and maybe link the conversation that Mike and I have. The Engaged Church Network is Mike's brand. He's got a lot more available on the book and the resources for young pastors. And buddy, it's a fun journey to do with you at this chapter of our lives. And if nothing else, we're having a good time.
We are. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.